Just how far will your Rivian R1T go on a complete charge? That's what this video is about. If you want to know complete details on the road trip range test, those details are on the website. There's a link down there in the description. First things first, let's talk about the footage on your screen. As we're rolling through it, you'll notice that one camera goes offline, and then shortly thereafter the other camera goes offline, and then they come back online. That's because GoPros have this tendency to overheat, and rather unfortunately, the way the air vents are designed in the Rivian, I couldn't find a really good way to keep the cameras cool until a little bit into the drive. So after a while, I finally got it sorted out, and then they stayed online the rest of the drive. The next thing to know is about the way that EPA tests range, or discloses range, I guess you could say, because the manufacturers are actually doing the testing, they're doing the reporting. The Rivian R1T is rated for 314 miles of range on every model, whether or not you have the tonneau cover, whether you have the all-season or the all-terrain tires, regardless of which of the 6 different wheels and tires you can get, and whether or not you have the skid plates and other options that add weight to the R1T. How is this possible? Well, manufacturers are allowed to use the same range figure, same fuel economy figures on a vehicle as long as it is the most common option or it's lower than the actual real-world numbers would indicate. So you are allowed to derate a vehicle, you're just not allowed to promise things that are not happening. And that's probably what's going on with the R1T. Range testing and fuel economy testing is expensive to do it according to the EPA procedure and have that official number on the window sticker. So most likely to cut costs, Rivian chose either the least efficient model or the most popular model. They ran that through the range testing procedure and fuel economy test procedure. That's how we got 314 miles. All of those options will affect a vehicle's range, and probably the most significant impact is going to be the all-terrain tires that are available on the R1T and you see out there in the wild quite a lot in a lot of range test videos and a lot of reviews on the R1T. That's because Rivian is really pushing the off-road nature of the R1T. However, my R1T has the road tires on it, so it's probably one of the most efficient versions. It also has the tonneau cover and it does not have the skid plates or the spare tire, so it is a little bit lighter. Now, how is it that all of these different variants of R1T can wear the same 314 miles of range, even though the tires alone could have a 10% impact on your real-world range figures? Well, that all has to do with the way that the EPA allows fuel economy testing. The EPA says that the number can be lower than reality. There's absolutely no penalty for a manufacturer saying that vehicle will get 30 miles per gallon, where in the real world it will actually get 40 miles per gallon. And the reason that Rivian likely went that route is that they didn't want to pay for fuel economy test cycles on all the different variants of the R1T. So most likely, although I don't have confirmation about this one, most likely Rivian chose the least efficient version of the R1T to do that testing on. That's how we end up with the 314 mile figure. The next thing you should know is that when most people think of range in an EV, they're talking about driving in a straight line on a road trip. You want to go from Northern California to Southern California. You want to go to Texas from Florida, something like that. That's a road trip style range test, which is why that's what we do here at Alex and Autos and EV Buyer's Guide. Now, if you want that number out of the EPA, you can get it for every new car. You simply go to fueleconomy.gov, find your vehicle, hit the personalized button on the fuel economy side, and set the stop and go city traffic to 0. That will give you the highway range of that vehicle. And for the Rivian R1T, 314 miles becomes 293 if you choose that option. Interesting twist, that's 10 miles further on the highway score than the new Ford Lightning. As with every other EV that I put to the test, the R1T was in its most eco-friendly mode. Rivian calls that conserve. It lowers the air suspension down to improve aerodynamics, and it disables the rear electric motors. Now, horsepower is still pretty plentiful even in conserve mode. You'll notice that starts are a little bit sluggish, but out on the open highway, it still feels pretty peppy because it's over 400 horsepower just on the front axle. It's finally time to dive through the jumble of numbers. 314 miles becomes 293 miles if you go to the fuel economy website, say you're just going to do highway driving. On the instrument cluster, or I should say the infotainment system in the Rivian, it does give you an estimate of your range based on the different drive modes. This vehicle was completely full. We let it charge absolutely overnight. It sat overnight. Battery was right around 60 degrees. It then claimed that you would get 326 miles in conserve mode, 301 miles in all-purpose mode, and 297 in sport mode. So pretty good compared to that EPA number of 293. Its estimates were actually above that in every drive mode available. I was really skeptical of that, to be perfectly honest. I thought, that seems absolutely wacky. There's no way it will go 326 miles. And I was very, very wrong. This Rivian went nearly 340 miles. And let's go through the test here again. So the test loop is 246 miles. It involves mountain pass of 1,800 feet that you have to climb up and over. The Rivian is 7,000 pounds, actually a little over 7,000 pounds. So for most vehicles in the road trip range test, I get a little bit below that highway fuel economy score because of the kind of hill climbing and the undulating hills that you find in that area of California. Over half the test is on interstate highway with speeds set to 72 or 75 miles an hour on the cruise control, depending on the speed limit zone. And then about a third of the test is on country highway with those mountain passes and the undulating hills. This is a test where normally most vehicles fall below those EPA numbers. But again, this got really, really excellent fuel economy scores, about 2.7 miles per kilowatt hour, just barely under there. I was really impressed with that, but I was also skeptical. So after the 246-mile loop was done, the vehicle still said I had 85 miles left to go, and I thought there's no way it could possibly do that. Now is the time to take the vehicle all the way to zero, which I don't normally do because my numbers are usually pretty representative. And by those calculations, it would have been around 333 miles of real-world range. But then I decided to go ahead and drive at those 85 miles. So I set the cruise control to 70 miles an hour, and I basically just did loops around San Jose, California, until I had consumed the entire battery. Only at the very, very end did I get a little bit concerned because it all of a sudden, for a while there, said I had 0% battery and about 3 miles of range left, and I was about 4 miles from my destination where I could charge the vehicle. But sure enough, it managed to do it. It managed to do 338 miles on 128 kilowatt hours of energy. That's a bottom line efficiency score of 2.64 miles per kilowatt hour, which I think is pretty impressive for a 7,100-pound pickup truck. That is certainly better than I experienced in my initial drive of the Ford F-150 Lightning, but if you want to know how the Lightning performs on this test, don't worry, that's coming up soon, because that Lightning is arriving the day that I am filming this video, and hopefully I'll be able to put it through the test very, very soon. And I will also be trying to drive the Lightning and the Rivian back-to-back with one another through the test loop to see how it does. On that test, I am going to put the Rivian in its all-purpose mode, so that way the rear electric motors are engaged, because the Lightning does not have an efficiency mode in the same way that we find in the Rivian R1T. So to be fair, there's going to be a second test on that, and we'll see how those numbers sort out. But any way you slice it, the Rivian is more impressive in terms of fuel economy than I had anticipated. And I do know that from my friends over at TFL Truck, they were actually testing a Rivian R1T with all-terrain tires on it, not the all-season tires on mine. And those tires definitely have an impact on the fuel economy, about 10% for most vehicles out there. So that's probably why we find that lower fuel economy number. If you had a 10% reduction in economy on this range test, it would have ended up around 304 miles, which is pretty close to the 293 according to the fueleconomy.gov website. Let me know what you think about all that down there in the comment section below. And of course, check out the full review on the Rivian R1T. It is a little long, so we're going to split it up into different video segments. And of course, check out the towing video on the R1T. That definitely was eye-popping as well, but in an entirely different way.